Hey guys, what is going on? RedMaster here, and welcome back to an episode of Cards and Castles. Today, of course, as you can tell by the title, we are going to be going over the changes to my tier list for the November 2018 patch. I know quite a ways away from that patch release, but I figured I would need to give it time, a little longer than I would like to. I admit some things I've had kind of planned out for a while, and I've been kind of finalizing here and there with the busy schedule that is December of mine, of course, coming in very, very closer than I would like it to. But regardless, let's go ahead and jump right into these changes. I'm only going to be really discussing the bigger talking points, at least in this video. Of course, like always, the full changes are down below. Let me know what you guys think about maybe me posting my full tier list somewhere else. I know it's been a while since you guys have seen that full list, and things have definitely changed. But I feel like I would need to get it out there at some point so you guys can really visualize all the changes and whatnot that have happened. Not just for this patch, but like all the previous patches as well up to this point. So, yeah, with that being said, we're going to go ahead, jump right into it, and, get started. Alright, so the first thing that I want to talk about on my list anyway is the swap between Shield Runner and Faithful Drake. Previously, Drake was a C while Runner was a B. In my opinion, they've kind of just swapped places. And that's really just down to the stat line, the basic idea there. People really liked Shield Runner at a 2-4 stat line. He was pretty good. Nothing really stood out about him, though, but he was a decent unit to pull from Inspire. Now, not really so much. With the 1 chip damage, it's kind of hard to justify throwing him in your deck. I mean, the 5 health for 2 gold is something, but, with cards like Kaiju that exist also, you can get that 5 HP plus an extra attack just for 1 gold more. I mean, obviously, Shield Runner is not the, biggest card to worry about, obviously. I mean, he wasn't seeing big play regardless. But I think it's interesting to see him kind of just swap places with the Faithful Drake, because now, not only does Faithful Drake have those same stats that were so appreciated in the previous Shield Runner, but now Faithful Drake also has flying, so you can utilize him in a more offensive way if you wanted to. Like, say if you were using Shield Runner in your Hyper Rush decks or your aggro decks, and you threw him out there to try and apply some pressure. Now you can do the same with Faithful Drake, except now you have the flying, so you might force a trade at your opponent, or you can go for face damage if they played incorrectly, who knows. Plus Drake also has the Dragon Tag, so there's a bit of synergy in there as well. So I think it was appropriate to kind of give Faithful Drake the B tier slot, because he, again, is an average card. I mean, if people really praised Shield Runner for those stat lines and served a purpose in that regard, I feel like Faithful Drake can easily fill in his slot without really changing any sort of deck composition, really, or at least like shaking up the deck in any way. I mean, sure, you may not have the dragon synergy in your deck, but whatever buffs you were running, maybe globally, those can easily also be applied to Faithful Drake, whereas previously you might have had Shield Runner. So, yeah, just kind of my take on that. I found it, again, interesting to see these 2 cards basically just swap places. Although this does put a weakness on Inspire as well, kind of just a last touch up there. Since Shield Runner is in the Inspire card pool, to have, or at least the Soldier pool, I should say, because Shield Runner was in that pool, the quality has slightly decreased, but with all the other buffs, I think, that came in this patch, it was necessary to hit, I think, something, and unfortunately Shield Runner had to take that hit. But overall, great to see Drake kind of moving up in the world, even though, again, he's not going to get a huge impact. To those who are previously running Shield Runner, again, I do recommend that you now try Faithful Drake in his spot if you're trying to still find a substitute. So, with that being said, I think we can move on to our next talking point, 'cause that pretty much wraps that up. Alright, next I want to talk about Dancing Swords, because, to be surprised, Dancing Swords actually did get quite the buff from this, in terms of him seeing a bit more action. His buff was small, a 1 increase to, I believe, attack, if I remember correctly. But essentially what that made Dancing Swords into is some pretty scary ninja material. With how popular cards like Multi-Strike and Lunging Attack are becoming, it's no surprise that the Swords was a, interesting addition to add on to that. With Sword gaining 3 attack on Awaken, essentially turning him, into a 7 attack. He can pretty much trade with, I think, most of the 4 gold area. I don't know if there's anything that's higher than 7 health within that. Not to mention, like, even when you think about it, with how popular Minotaur is, even like a Dancing Swords can trade with a Minotaur, and that's that's not a negative loss. Like, that's not negative value. That's, well, if anything, slight positive value, because you're trading a 4 gold for a 6 gold. So um, I just found that interesting. Not really a big buff. Again, like I said, just a 1 to attack. But what he can do now with that 7 attack has been quite illustrated recently, especially with how, like I said, popular ninja things are. Awakened decks probably going to use him more. I expect them to. If they were kind of running Barb in Sword's place, I recommend you give Swords a try, especially in Awakened decks, and maybe if you want, like I said, try with the Ninja Shenanigans. Not really going to talk a huge amount on the Swords, though. I do feel like it's a minor change, but that did, in my opinion, I think, bring him from a C tier to a B tier. Now he's, he can compete with the 4 gold units now, whereas previously with his 3 attack, it would be a 6/4 on Awaken, and that may, it was rough trying to see whether you would add him or not. People would usually go Barb regardless, but I think Sword now does deserve a second look for those kind of questioning if they should use him or not. So overall, I would say that's a good change for the Swords. Yep, there it is. Next up is the Windfall Griffin. Now, you guys already probably know from my patch review my thoughts regarding the Griffin, but if you don't know, basically I did really find the Griffin change enjoyable, and I asked your guys for some thoughts regarding it. A lot of people told me that, honestly, the Griffin would never surpass Minotaur as the go-to 6 gold, but I think alongside that, a lot of people did agree, though, that the Griffin change was needed to, again, like I was saying, separate him from Minotaur. Essentially, Griffin was just a crappier version of Minotaur with flying. 1 less attack, same health, same cost, but again, the flying was just there. But now that he has that extra health, creating a 5/8, it gives him a more, like I said, defined role as a more tankier unit rather than the Minotaur, which goes more towards attack. Obviously, in a game like this, though, you're going to see people going towards the Minotaur regardless. But I think it's nice that Griffin did get, some kind of recognition. And if you are playing global buffs, that is now going to be a 6/9 Griffin, which, is something to think about, especially with flying. Of course, that's a beautiful mechanic that, just fly right over the body blocks. But, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. I discussed my thoughts more on it in my patch review, but I think bringing it to you guys just to highlight that, this change, in my opinion, brought him from a C tier to a B tier. A card that really, doesn't deserve no longer to kind of just be overlooked because of how very similar it was to Minotaur. And now, in my opinion, has that defined role as the tankier unit, which some people may prefer. I'm not saying it's the best go-to, and people are still going to play Minotaur for obvious reasons. But hey, if you like a bit more tankier units, I definitely recommend checking out the Griffin. So a great change for the Griffin indeed. Next up is the Heavenly Shield. Now, I don't remember. I think this card used to have a different name, if I remember correctly. I mean, it eludes me now, but I could have sworn it had another name. But anyway, Heavenly Shield now giving a unit armor +2. I would say that's somewhat interesting, especially different from what it used to be. Obviously, this is no card that's going to shake up the meta extremely for obvious reasons. It's really flux filler still, kinda. But I did move it from an F tier to a C tier because if you think about it, the way we value Dragon Crest Shield, like, Dragon Crest Shield essentially does the same thing Shield does, but you're you're putting an extra 2 gold on that unit just so it can draw you cards. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that the draw needs to be included in Heavenly Shield for it to be good. It is where in my opinion it's a C tier card now. But the reason I did mark it that way is because armor is such a, I don't want to really say, like, to me it's a bit of a pain to get by, but I'm not dissing the ability. It's a great ability to have on a unit. So when you give a unit that armor, it's basically 2 HP that can regenerate for every turn. So I think that's something people overlook, at least when they looked at the Heavenly Shield change. And again, with how much we value Dragon Crest Shield for doing pretty much the same thing, just except with adding draw onto it. Essentially, this is like the poor man's Dragon Crest Shield, in my opinion. It's not really to be used, competitively by any means. But if you are trying to get practice with Dragon Crest Shield, don't necessarily have the card to do it yet, you can use Heavenly Shield as a second replacement for that to try out the armor in your deck, see how that armor works, and then maybe once you can afford yourself Dragon Crest Shield, you'll be more adept to using it. You've used the armor before, and now every time you get attacked, you're just adding draw onto it. So it's kind of like practice for Dragon Crest Shield, which I think is a nice touch to it. It's kind of like a starter card in that sense that builds you up to the Dragon Crest Shield. So a great change to Heavenly Shield. Definitely, like, not really giving it more of a defined role like Griffin did, but kind of. How do I even put this? Like I said, poor man's Dragon Crest Shield, definitely great for practice with the card, though. And by the card, I mean Dragon Crest Shield, so good change. Alright, and now the final card I want to talk about for this tier list video is the Mystic Dojo. Now, aside from the Shield Runner, the Mystic Dojo was the second card, that kind of, in my opinion, deserved to go lower. Like, if you noticed, most of the list below, which, of course, if you haven't read, be sure to read that below. It's the only card that went down in tier. Everything else either remained the same or went up. So, being one of two cards to only go down is quite interesting, especially with a so buffed heavy patch. But I feel like the Mystic Dojo, honestly, it's about time, like I mentioned in the patch review, that, it was hit. I think a lot of people might have been surprised initially by the change, but once they saw it really play out, they saw how much of an impact it had on the trap decks itself. I mean, and you could even ask any trap player that's out there. I definitely imagine that decks feel differently now, especially with the Dojo reducing it by 1 rather than 2. The 1 means you have to play a trap for 2 gold, which is a pretty hefty investment, especially in the earlier stages of the game. And at that point, you're really just taking the turn to cycle. You can't get a 2 gold unit down to utilize the trap and force your opponent to activate it in your favor. You kind of just have to place the trap if you want to draw and let the opponent hit you. And with trap decks, you don't want that, because then the opponent can snowball you into having this massive force on your base, and your traps essentially be useless. So the fact that this slowed the trap momentum down heavily, in my opinion, means that Dojo, obviously, it's no longer just a B tier card. It is still, well, it actually went down to a C in my opinion, because it can't really do what the trap decks needed to do. I mean, it can still, like, slightly. If you have more than one Dojo out, obviously, you're not going to have a problem, but that really depends on if you get double Dojo out. And, there are games where that happens, sometimes even triple Dojo happening, and if you reach triple, it's basically like nothing's changed for you. But, with the 1 cost reduction rather than 2, it definitely slows the trap decks down. And, we've seen this already taking place in the meta. There's certainly been a sizable reduction in the number of trap decks that are out there. Of course, they're still kind of played here and there, and obviously there are still trap, as they put it in quotes, trap decks that use it as really a support role for whatever the main theme of their deck is. So in that regard, sometimes people don't really care about the cost of it. They're really just using it as, like I said, draw support. But for those of you who are playing dedicated trap decks, I definitely think this change was heavy for the archetype. And I really won't be surprised if as a result of this, we see less and less trap decks to maybe the point where they're not even on Cards TV anymore, if they're not even in the top ranks. I'm not sure about that. I don't think that's going to be true. That's just kind of me stating a prediction. I don't really know how... I don't know a lot of players that use trap decks regularly, from who I talk to. So, with that being said, I think this was a pretty sizable hit to the trap decks, if you didn't really figure that out already. Alright folks, with that being said, I hope you did enjoy this tier list update video. Like I mentioned before, I will try, if you guys want me to get my tier list up somewhere, whether that be on the subreddit, or somewhere like that. I don't know if I can keep making, like, videos for the tier list, especially when they're like small updates to it. Or at least maybe if I do make an updated video tier list, it might be for, when we get big card updates, something like that. Again, I'll figure it out. Let me know what you guys want to see though, because it's always appreciated to to have you guys kind of uh, tell me what you think, the direction should go, and give me your advice, feedback, all that good stuff. But yeah, like I said, if you like the video, be sure to hit that like button, share with your friends, and comment down below your thoughts on the updated tier list. And of course, you can give it a read down below if you haven't done so already in the description. And while you're down there, if you haven't done so already, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Help show your support the channel. Help us grow by clicking that subscribe button at no additional cost to you. So, with that being said, guys, until next time, stay gaming.